Hey everyone, this is Bunny. Today we're going to talk about miniatures. So a lot of people want to get into painting miniatures. They'd love to paint their own, have some color happening when they play their games, but not everyone knows exactly where to start. So to be clear, these videos are going to be about creating miniatures you yourself can play with and be happy with, and that look good when you're playing, that really stand out on your board, whether you play D&D or Pathfinder, or even if you just play Monopoly and you want to paint those guys. This is about painting them well enough for you and not necessarily mastering all those skills and techniques so that you can be one of the best painters out there. Now, can you be one of the best painters out there? Probably. If you work at it and you practice, absolutely. So we have dragons. We always have dragons. So could you be one of the best? Sure. But the purpose of these videos is to show you how to paint your miniatures at home so that you don't have to pay someone else to paint them. Now, if you want to do a top-notch job, then you need a lot of practice, or you have to pay someone to do it for you. So let's get started talking about miniatures, the miniatures themselves. Before you can actually paint your miniatures, you need miniatures. So where do you get them? This can actually be a little bit of a conundrum for a lot of people. You're sitting there going, I kind of want a little lady, but I don't know where to get her. Okay, let's talk about that. So if you play a specific game, okay, so let's say you play maybe even Risk. Yes, I've painted my Risk pieces because I can. But no matter what you're playing, so for example, this is an expansion to the Labyrinth game I have, and yes, it has little miniatures in there that I haven't painted yet. I'll get to it. So, if you play a specific game, it probably already comes with the miniatures that you need. So this one did, and a lot of my other games do. I have quite a few games that have miniatures. Some are currently painted, some are still in the queue or getting there. So, depends on what game you're playing. A specific game already comes with its miniatures, or you can buy the miniatures to go with it. So getting those miniatures is really simple. But if you play like D&D or Pathfinder or any of these games that use these kind of miniatures, you know, here's a character and here's a Jelly Blob. I love this guy. I don't know why I love this guy. I don't even use him in games. I just like him. Or even this big dude. This is a Tarrasque. You big. Don't knock over the dragon. It's rude. Stay. And of course, dragons. So if you play something like D&D or Pathfinder, the options are pretty limitless. There's a lot of options out there, a lot of choices. You can get your miniatures from a lot of different companies. So where do you start when you're sorting through them? So the first thing you have to decide is metal. So this is a metal miniature. Okay, she is inside under all this paint, metal. Okay, so metal miniatures versus, for example, this mimic is actually plastic. Okay, he's a plastic miniature. So you have to decide whether you want plastic versus metal. Now, when I first got started, I was they all have to be metal. They're higher quality, they're better miniatures. And yes, that's true. They are, much more durable because they are metal instead of being plastic. They can't melt or anything like that. Though, let's be fair, if you're exposing a metal miniature to heat hot enough to melt this plastic miniature, then you're going to destroy the paint job on this one anyway, even if she doesn't melt. Okay? So, yes, they're more durable. That durability may or may not matter to you. The downside of these metal miniatures is they're freaking expensive. They're also really heavy. And I know that sounds funny because she's, a couple of thumb widths high here. She's really tiny, right? So, but she's heavy. When you compare her, she is heavier than this troll. Okay, this troll is much, much lighter than she is. So why does that matter? If you are going to be moving around with your miniatures, all right, so if you are going to be taking your miniatures to your friend's house or taking them on Saturdays to your local gaming hall or whatever, your local game shop that hosts tournaments and things like that, if you're going to be hauling them around, metal might not be your best choice because they are a lot heavier. So if you get 100 of these in your bag, I know they're little, 100 of them doesn't take up that much space, but they're metal. Okay, so 100 of these guys are very, very heavy. So just imagine if you had a miniature this big made of metal. Now, to be fair, most miniatures of this size are not metal. Okay, that's actually kind of rare. So you won't find them in that size as metal. But metal is a lot heavier and it's a lot more expensive. Okay, so she cost, if I remember, she was like $25 or something, unpainted. I had to paint her later. And she is, by the way, that's the first miniature I ever painted in my life. Okay, that's the very first. So she's not fantastic, but I love her for what she is. She was my very first attempt at painting, and I adore her. Why is her skin green? Because it ended up that way. Because I didn't wait long enough between painting the trim on her dress and painting her skin, and the green bled into the skin tone. Yeah, that happens. We'll go over that when we talk about painting. But yes, so she's metal, and I used to be all into the metal ones. I do recommend plastic. They are cheaper. They are easier to move and transport because they're not so heavy. I just recommend them. They're easier to assemble. Metal can be a little more difficult to assemble, so as much as I like her, she was harder to assemble. Her arms were not attached, and I had to get her little leg in there. So she was more difficult to assemble than the plastic ones, and it's not always easy to find a glue that will assemble a metal miniature. So get metal if you like, obviously, and sometimes the only miniature that you really like for a certain thing only comes in metal. So then you'll have to get it anyway. But I do recommend plastic, especially if you're just starting out. Plastic paints easier. It's a little bit more annoying to prime maybe, but not that bad. So, especially not the way I do it, the way I'm going to show you to do it. So, yeah, this is not bad at all. I like the plastic. So, yeah, plastic miniatures is my recommendation. Where do you get them? Well, you can go online and find a lot. Okay, it can be a little overwhelming when you first log in and you realize there's 85 million companies that make these. All right, so some of my favorites that I would recommend. Reaper. Reaper's a good one. She's actually, no, she's not Reaper. I don't remember what she is. It was a long time ago. I started painting a very long time ago, so she's very old. But Reaper is a good one. I like Reaper. I like Dark Sword. Their miniatures tend to be pretty easy to assemble. Both Reaper and Dark Sword, pretty easy to assemble. And they do paint up pretty well. The plastic's not super annoying. It's not bad to prime. Lately, I have been really into Akron Studios. So that's what this is, and this Trask is also that. And several of the things in the background are the Dungeons and Lasers by Akron Studios. So yes, I actually really like them. Their assembly's a little annoying sometimes. Like, he was kind of annoying because his assembly directions were not great. But the actual miniatures, once they're assembled and painted, are actually fantastic. Like, this dragon is one of my favorite dragons. I'm glad he has a tongue. The story about the tongue is I lost the tongue when I was assembling him, and it was actually 6 months later where I found the tongue sitting in my jewelry box. So, we're lucky this guy has a tongue. Yeah, happy he has a tongue. So, yes, I actually really like the Dungeons and Lasers series by Akron Studios. I have a lot of it, so if you recognize some of it, yeah, that's because that's what it is. Now, it's not all that. Like, these guys are not Akron Studios. That's not. But I have a lot of Akron Studios these days just because I really like them. They're quality miniatures, quality plastic. They're just, I like them, but also Reaper and Dark Sword. You can go cheaper, like these guys. So these little animals here, the reason I brought them out, these little guys are dirt cheap. Okay? These little animals, I got them dirt cheap on Amazon. Not even from, like, it's not a company most people would even No, because it's not a big name company or anything. They're just cheap little dudes. Okay, so they're cheap little dudes that I got out of nowhere, and he looks pretty good. I just needed some animals, right? Some animals like crabs and stuff. So I got a few sets of these actually. I have like 6 crabs or something now. I got lots of crabs. You always need lots of crabs. If you're playing D&D, sometimes you just like, oh my god, I need crabs. Or spiders. Crabs and spiders. That's pretty much life when you're playing some of these RPGs. Crabs and spiders. So if you see a bunch of crabs and spiders, grab them. You're going to need them. So, yes. So these guys are bottom of the barrel, dirt cheap. You know, this is just a pig. There's nothing special about him. I have a bunch of farm animals. Somewhere I have a horse, but I think my son stole him for a game he's running. Anyway, so these were dirt cheap off of Amazon. This little corner section here, they were dirt cheap. Like, I'm talking, they were like $8 for the pack of, I think there were 6 in the pack. I don't know where the 6th one is. I think the 6th one is the horse, in fact, and I think Tristan has it. Anyway, so you can get them very, very cheap on Amazon, especially if you're looking like for scenery and stuff. Now, this is Akron Studio, so this isn't cheap. But if you're looking for something like this, and you can't find it, or you don't really want to spend the money, hop on Amazon and look for somebody who is really, really dirt cheap. Okay, because you'll find them. You'll absolutely find the dirt cheap, bottom of the barrel. They're not bad. Like, this guy's not bad. Okay, this little crab is not bad. He's just cheap. So, will they last as long? Probably not. But I mean, for just painting them and sticking them in a cabinet till you need to use them, there's nothing wrong with the cheap versions that you get off Amazon. Okay, so absolutely you can kind of cheap out a little bit on there. If you don't play RPGs, so let's say you don't want to play, you just want to paint them and display them, then yeah, you might be looking at some of these what we call bigatures. So he's big, he's a miniature, but he's big. Or something like this. You might go with those companies, but there are companies that specialize in display quality miniatures. So think Big Child Creative or Hera Models. I actually really like Hera Models. They are really detailed. They're really easy to paint. They make great display pieces if you put them up around your home. So you can put them on your coffee table. You can put them in your display cabinets, and they're a real conversation piece. The downside is most of their stuff, like Hera and Big Child, most of their stuff is not necessarily suitable for gaming. So it's too big, or it's not a full miniature, it'll be just a bust or things like that. So if you want to play, those might not be the right options for you. But if you want display quality, especially Hera, I would especially go with Hera, but don't forget to check out Big Child. They are absolutely fantastic. I have some of their pieces. If I were to go into the living room, which I'm not right now, but if I were, I could show you a couple of their display pieces in the living room from Hera, because they're really good. Definitely look into them. If you 3D print, I will eventually cover 3D printing and how to do that and how cool it is, because it's a lot of fun. And we throw off a lot of things off our 3D printer. But if you do 3D print, you can get files and print your own. So you can do like DM Stash or Crypto Studios sell files, especially the STL files. They sell the files that you can program into your 3D printer and print your own miniatures. If you're going to do that, I would actually recommend you start with Loot Studios. Loot is really excellent because their miniatures are pretty beginner friendly and their STL files rarely have an error. So now, I love DM Stash, but sometimes some of the files I've gotten from them have had errors that were annoying to correct or were impossible to correct, and so they didn't print quite like they were supposed to. But that's fine. Usually I can fix it. However, if you're just getting started and you don't want to do a lot of fixing, you don't want to do a lot of detail, annoying, ooh, this isn't quite right work, start with Loot. Loot is fantastic, and I will put some links in the description to these different companies so that you can find them, because they are actually fantastic companies and they are definitely worth a shot. So yes, before you start painting miniatures, you've got to get yourself some miniatures. So take a look at what's out there. browse Amazon if you're looking for really cheap stuff, especially if you're just getting started. I'll put a couple of links to a couple of things on Amazon that are not super expensive if you just want to kind of get started. I'll do a scenery kit and probably some monsters or something. I haven't decided yet. But look in the description and you'll see a couple of links to fairly cheap stuff on Amazon. Definitely worth checking out before you invest in something like this for painting, because, you know, if you buy the cheap stuff and you screw it up, it's not really that big a deal. If I were to screw up something like this, that wouldn't be fun for me. So that is about it for us here today. Get yourself some miniatures. In the next video, which will be posted in a week, we will talk about what you do with it once you get your miniatures. Most of them are like this. They come in a box and they are not assembled. Okay? They come in a box. So we will talk about that next time, what you do with that. One thing I did forget to mention is some of the games like D&D, like actually produce official miniatures. Okay, so these guys are actually official. You know, these are Wizard of the Coast. Actually came from there. So you can get official D&D miniatures. Official, if you play one of these games, official, you can get official miniatures. They're fun, they're cool. You can paint them to look just like the book because their artwork is modeled after the books. But the downside is they're more expensive. So just wanted to point that out, that yes, you can get official ones, because someone will ask me. You can get official ones, they'll cost more. So again, I mean, the benefit of these ones, they don't have to be assembled. At least those particular ones don't have to be, other ones do. Anyway, we will come back next week and we will talk about how to assemble your miniatures once you've ordered them and they're on your doorstep. What do you do now? It's actually not difficult, so we will discuss that next week. But that's about it for us here today. I hope you'll be back with us next time. Bye!